First of all, thank you. We are officially into the after-school portion of the program. And thank you for sticking around. Thank you to Peggy and Taylor and Keith at Teaching with Primary Sources for putting on one of my favorite conferences of the year. And thanks to History Colorado, which has given us this treasure of a museum. If you get a chance, stick around for Teacher Educator Night or Educator Night at the museum, whatever they're calling it. Go see that 1968 exhibit in El Movimiento. They're both fantastic. And all of their other regular exhibits are great too, but go see those special exhibits because they're amazing. Peggy told you I'm Jason Hanson. I am a researcher at the Center of the American West at CU Boulder. Center of the American West, for those of you who don't know, has been a hub for academic programs, public events, and scholarship about the West for 25 years now. Those of you who have been at this conference before, though, may know me better as the oysters and beer guy. Those are previous talks of mine. You can see I was really creative with the slides. This is a good time to do a little note on slide design. I went to the great trouble of soliciting a number of testimonials about what I'm going to talk about from people more qualified than me to talk about it. And rather than rattle those all off to you, I decided I would just let them run in the bottom third of my slides. I'm not really going to refer to them. They will connect, I hope, to what I'm talking about. But if you get bored with what I'm talking about, think of those as a little Easter egg that can keep you engaged. So in addition to my gustatory scholarly pursuits, the most important part of my identity is that I'm dad to a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. There they are. They're beautiful, obviously. And the theme of the conference this year is vital viewpoints. And so I wanted to share some things that I have learned about education by seeing the world through their eyes. I got the idea for this from a breakfast conversation I overheard between the two of them. The older one there, Ellery, was dropping some knowledge on her younger sister, Hadley. And she explained, the places that kids go are fun, but the places that adults go are plain and not so fun. This was in the context of me getting ready for work while they were getting ready to go to gymnastics class. And this is a good time to say that I swear on my historian's license that I am accurately quoting everything in this presentation. None of this is made up. Kids say the darndest things, y'all. So I was tempted to tell my daughter about little Rosie Burdick and her fellow oyster shuckers at the turn of the century before there were child labor laws, and put a little buzzkill on her. Or I could have told her about places like the History Colorado Museum, which my daughter still refers to as the Blue Bear Museum, and conferences like TLD, which with people like you is undeniably a fun place that I get to go. But it struck me in a way that arrested my snarkiness, that there was something more to what my daughter was saying. Kids' places are fun. Somewhere along the way, though, you and I, we stop thinking of the places that we go in our daily lives as particularly fun. We start to think of them as plain, ordinary, uninteresting. Elsewhere is where fun lives, not where we go on a day-to-day basis. And that's not only a shame, it's just dead wrong. The world's full of fascinating places, and kids they're attuned to place, and they're open to being fascinated. And that's why their places are fun. It's not because we design them and put bright colors on the walls. It's because they're going to have fun no matter where they are. Even at an internment camp on the Eastern Plains. Those are some boys at the Amache internment camp out playing. They're digging a cave and scaring up jackrabbits and rattlesnakes, according to the photographer who took the picture. And they're learning. They're learning from their immediate environment. My daughters are attuned to place everywhere they go. They notice details about their surroundings. Son of a gun. We're going to go with that slide. They notice details about their surroundings that I totally tune out at this point. They notice how the pattern on one of my wife's purses looks like the shadows from our garden in the backyard. Or the infinite, why am I having so much? Every year I have trouble with this clicker. I don't know why. There we go. The infinite color variations in a pile of leaves. Or the different seed heads on tall grass that we're walking through. Or the way an ambulance sounds different when there's snow on the ground. They're figuring out the world through the lens of their immediate experience. I am sorry about my clicking here. Okay, this is not new information. I realize that. I'm not up here like, I'm not dropping the same level of knowledge that my daughter was dropping earlier. We know this because we organize our curriculums from the home out. We start with the family, we move to the home, we move to the neighborhood, the city, the state, the country, the nation, or the world. The world gets bigger and bigger, and that makes sense. But we don't leave home in 4th grade, which is usually the last time that kids in Colorado encounter anything about Colorado in the classroom. So why does our pedagogical structure? While you consider that, I'm going to tell you another story about my daughter. A few months ago, I was taking her to bed, and I don't know what prompted this question, but I'm sure it's a question that every parent gets. She asked me, "Daddy, where's heaven?" And I thought about it, and I wanted to give her an honest answer. So I said, well, I don't know. But some people like to think of heaven as being in the sky up above the clouds. And she said, I like to think that heaven is in the mountains because they're so beautiful. And my first reaction was just pride, because the sainted John Denver could not have said it better. But as I was laying there watching her drift to sleep, it struck me that what she was expressing is that we are wired to build our framework of knowledge on what we know best through our firsthand experiences. In this case, she knows the mountains. They're the most beautiful place she knows. That must be where heaven is. And it's no matter how abstract the concept, or maybe in proportion to how abstract the concept, we retreat to these places that we know to make sense. So an example. One day I'm going to tell my daughters about the girls in this photo. They're at Camp Nizoni at Lincoln Hills. If you look closely, you can see that they're all African-American girls playing in the South Boulder Creek up above Boulder. And for them, this is one of the few mountain places where they could go and be welcome and relax and recreate. Black people were not welcome in very many of our mountain communities in the 1920s when this picture was taken, unless they were domestic servants. So in a sense, heaven probably did seem like it was in the mountains for them. I've taken my daughters to the Mlk Statue in City Park. I live close to City Park. We've gone to that statue. It's awesome. I love it. But when I try to talk to them about racism and civil rights, it's just too abstract. It's not landing. I can see it's just not landing. But when we're up in the mountains, and I tell them that they can't play in that stream because blonde girls aren't allowed in that stream, they get that. That's unfair. And what I'm getting at here is that when we approach difficult topics within the context of place, we make it real. Real is the tall grass and the aspens and the evergreens and the clear blue mountain lakes that John Denver loved so well. Sometimes this kind of place-based approach is confused with parochialism and intellectual boosterism. I know some of you probably feeling some red flags go up as I'm talking here. It's the territory of a bunch of homers who are pushing an agenda. And usually that means excluding what doesn't fit into their worldview or what seems too difficult for them to want to deal with. And that, I want to say really explicitly, that is not what I'm talking about here. Happy-faced history that just fits a particular agenda or just makes us feel good about Colorado or about anywhere else is a disservice to our children. It's bad practice that degrades the role of education in a free society. And it leaves our students less equipped to deal with difficult situations when they appear in their own lives. Once again, my daughter put me onto this, to the value of telling difficult stories, even at young ages. Last summer, during the Miller Moth invasion, do you all remember the Miller Moth invasion? It seemed like our house was going to get overrun most evenings. We would just put on a light in the hallway and then like seal off our bedrooms and sit in the dark and hope that they would move on in the night. But one morning, my daughter and I were walking upstairs, and we saw a little moth laying still on the floor on the landing. And my daughter said, "Look, Dad, it's a baby moth. Why isn't it flying?" And I hesitated, and then I wanted to be truthful again, so I said, I think it's dead, sweetheart. And there was a pause, and then in a little whisper, she said, "I didn't know that babies could die too." And I didn't really know what to say. I just said, "I wish it wasn't true." And it was one of those, heartbreaking parenting moments, of which there are many, where we want to protect our children from sadness, and we can't. And there are heartbreaking historical moments like that, too. The KKK burning crosses in Denver in the 1920s, throwing bombs at African-American homes. The Sand Creek Massacre of Cheyenne and Arapaho people in 1864 by the Colorado Territorial Militia. A devastating measles outbreak in the small community of Keota that carried off a number of school children and left others paralyzed permanently. Or the Ludlow Massacre in 1914, in which 19 people lost their lives, including 14 women and children who were asphyxiated underneath a burning tent. So this is a picture of the Forbes tent camp, about 8 miles away from Ludlow. It was one of more than a dozen tent camps set up by the United Mine Workers Association of America during the strike. And it was destroyed in March 1914, about a month before Ludlow. You don't hear a lot about it. It's often overshadowed by what happened at Ludlow a month later. But once you do hear about it, it's a story that sticks with you. On the right there, you can see a group of miners and their families standing, I got a laser, standing next to a destroyed tent. That's on the left, I'm sorry. On the right, while it may not look like it, you see the reason why the militia attacked when it did during the winter months, leaving these people homeless and cold. That is the Zanatel family tent, and it was the only tent left standing in Forbes. 2 days before the attack, Emma Zanatel had had twins prematurely, and they were both stillborn. While most of the community was down in Trinidad burying the babies, the militia took the opportunity to attack the unguarded colony. Years later, Emma Zanatel recounted that 2 soldiers had come into her tent and found her laying in bed, sick and grief-stricken and unable to move. And one of them had ordered her to get out because he was going to set fire to the tent. And the other one apparently appraised the situation with a little more compassion and said, and told his fellow soldier that he would kill him if he hurt Emma Zanatel. And the tent stayed. That's not such happy-faced history. The stories of Ludlow and lots of other things are really difficult, but they have to be taught. They have to be taught because our kids are learning these things anyway, and we need to help them put framework around this, help them use what they know to understand the wider world. Okay, but I said TLD was a fun conference, right? So let's switch gears slightly and talk about Frozen. My daughter, a few nights ago, this is actually pretty fresh, while we were getting ready for bed, we had watched Frozen recently, and she said, "Dad, I wished I was Elsa. But I bet Elsa wished she was me, because she wished she had her whole family." And for those of you who don't have little girls or who have somehow missed the Frozen juggernaut, Elsa and her sister Anna are two princesses who were orphaned. And Elsa is the angsty one with magic powers and shimmery dresses, so she is every little girl's favorite. So it was a big deal for my daughter Ellery to decide that she would rather be with her family than to be fabulous but isolated like Elsa. I was once again very proud of her. And for me, it just was another reminder of how programmed for connection we are. We want to connect. That's Elsa, by the way. That programming for connection is why we have places like Mesa Verde, why people came together in the 12th and 13th century and built these incredible cities. I wanted to include this artist reconstruction, not because it's a primary source, but because it speaks to connection at another level. The need to connect, to understand the relationship between who we are and who people in the past were. A picture like that breathes life into a picture like the one on the top. It turns those stones from ruins into people's homes and everyday places. And they may be doing similar stuff to what we're doing, getting dinner ready, watching the kids playing. We all want to know how we're connected to a larger story. HBO has made $1 bajillion by putting together high-end dramas of people who seem more interesting than we are, or who live in more interesting times than we do, who really have the same problems that we have. I do it with beer and oyster. You like oysters? Well, so have people throughout history. It's amazing. Or, you like beer? Well, that makes you basically the kin with every other great person in history. I'm doing it right now by using my daughters to talk about how we're all connected. But I think in a classroom, doing it with place works best. And that brings me to the heart of things here, the reasons to focus on Colorado in your classrooms. There are a couple reasons. One, you're going to get richer stories from richer sources. The first thing that any historian does when they're getting ready for a project is to go to the place and check out the archives. If you're doing Colorado history, that's at your fingertips. You're also going to inspire better citizens and stronger leaders. Research shows that education that begins with place can lead long-term to investment in communities. And third, we're back to connection. There's the human level of connection, people and places that came before us. And then there's an intellectual level of connection, and I think that's really the key here. The need to make connection across disciplines and across artificial pedagogical divides. Those sorts of divides break down once you get on the ground. You can talk about a place, you can talk about its geology, you can talk about its history, you can talk about people who went there or why they weren't allowed to go there. You can talk about what it took to put a railroad through there. You can hit every discipline in every single place virtually in the state. And that's the key to fostering students who can see connections and, in the words of St. Steve there, make something new. The world needs more Renaissance men and women. And the Renaissance, I think, begins at home, building a deep, sophisticated knowledge of where we come from. Yes, learn about the world. By all means, learn about the world. But my thesis is that we will produce better students and better citizens and better leaders if we help them understand their own place more deeply. And fortunately, it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to run quickly through a flowering of initiatives that's come to be over the last few years that are all aimed at helping make it easier to sprinkle a little Colorado into your classroom or to use it as a springboard to launch into a discussion about something else that you were going to talk about anyway. You can talk about the Gilded Age, talk about it in terms of Ludlow. You can talk about World War I and the Holocaust, but why not challenge students to talk about how Amache fits into that story? You can talk about civil rights set out from Lincoln Hills. Talk about colonialism and globalization. How about Bent's Fort as a starting point? You want to talk about change over time? Let's talk about Mesa Verde. You want to talk about homesteading and the Civil War? How about Kyoto? We never stop building on our immediate context, but we stop talking about it in class after 4th grade. And these are tools that I hope can help you bring that make that conversation deeper in 4th grade. I don't want to leave the impression that 4th grade is anything less than awesome in this state. But keep that conversation going beyond 4th grade. The first there is the Colorado Encyclopedia. That's coming next year. That will have thousands of articles about our state. And it will have about 100 articles that are leveled to be used at in various grades. We have History Colorado's online exhibits and digital badges. Those are designed to bring this fabulous museum right into your classroom, no field trip required. We have National History Day in Colorado, which gives students the opportunity to explore those connections between disciplines in the context of a history project. It doesn't have to be about Colorado, but like I said, after judging for 10 years, the best projects often are about Colorado because the stories are richer and the sources are richer. Oops. The Colorado experience is totally getting shortchanged. It's on Rocky Mountain PBS. We all know that students, I can't get it to go back, but we all know that students, there we go. They prefer videos to textbooks, and these are great videos about Colorado history. Colorado Student Leaders Institute is a summer program coming this summer, in which every student will do a capstone project on Colorado history that unites all of their other disciplinary endeavors. Colorado in the Classroom Primary Source Kits is a project I've been involved in. It's a collection of primary resources curated by people who are experts on these topics, annotated by them, and then real classroom teachers supply suggestions on what standards you can use these for and how you might use them in a classroom. Those are rolling out on History Colorado's website, hopefully in April. And finally, this is my big finish. That's my big finish. I know, I'm terrible with this thing. The Teaching with Primary Sources Teachers Network, which I hope you have all had a chance to learn about today, either out at the tables or in some other way. They have been kind in creating a space where teachers who are interested in bringing Colorado into their classroom can connect, can be among the first to get some of these curricular materials, can have a chance to provide feedback or questions to the authors of those curricular materials, to talk about and trade tips and strategies for how they use them, to crowdsource answers to their questions. It launches today. And I hope you sign up because I'm going to start putting content on it next week. And I would love to see you in there. So I'm going to end on this fundamental question. It's one that we and our students answer thousands of times over the course of our life. But what I want to leave you with is, depending on what's behind that answer, it may be the most important questions we ever ask ourselves. Thank you. I hope you'll be in touch, and I hope to see you in the TPS Teachers Network.